Hello everyone, and welcome to Straight Chilling. Each week we watch and review a horror film for your entertainment. You can send all questions and comments to straightchillingpodcast@gmail.com, and don't forget to keep chilling.
Yeah, we straight chillin', serial killing. 5 cold feelings on the mind, got you reeling. 5-star ratings from the floor to the ceiling. If you get your 1 star, no time for feelings. Got a demon DJ, all the 1s and 2s. By the name Elsevier, so don't get confused. So grab a seat by the fire, roast them all in 2. And prepare to hear the legend of the Straight Chillin' crew.
What up, nerds? Welcome to another godlike episode of Straight Chilling. My name is Bob, and I'll be your host for this evening. This is going to be episode number 244, recorded on Tuesday, December 10th, 2019. Tonight we're going to be talking about Mother, which was chosen by our lovely Patreon supporter, Alex K. Big thanks and big shouts outs to Alex for the support and the love on the Patreon. Before we get into it, let me introduce everyone else on the show tonight. First up, calling in from Southern Korea, we got our boy Soju. What's up, Soju?
What up? It's your boy, Holly Jolly Stains. 'Tis the season, squad. I would like to go ahead and apologize. I totally ghosted the crew yesterday, so this is a day late. I apologize to everyone. Totally just sleeping in my bed while everyone else was ready to cast. That's my bad.
Dreaming about Christmas yet to come, no doubt.
Here it comes.
Last but not least, joining us on the show tonight, making her triumphant return to the Straight Chilling crew. Everybody welcome Nicole. What's up, Nicole?
Not much. Calling in from a different place. I'm usually in Florida, but tonight I'm in Arkansas. So I've escaped the hellish heat of Florida Christmas. And it's a lovely, 40 degrees outside, appropriate for this time of year.
The high today was 83 degrees.
Oh my God. I'm dreading that as well. I'm going out. Got my sweaters, got my coat, got my knitted caps.
It is going to
83. Whoa.
It's going to start cooling off towards the end of the week. It's going to drop down to, hold on to your britches, the 60s. Whoa. Crazy.
Welcome to the Weathercast.
Yep.
Lovely.
Nicole, before we get into it, why don't you take a moment to remind everybody about all of your spooky doings and where they can find you. You've got a podcast of your own.
Yes. So I have the Chiaroscuro horror podcast. And unlike Straight Chilling, I do not do review. I always refer people to you if they want to hear horror review.
Thanks.
Thank you.
But it is a monthly podcast about, I pick a topic and then I discuss that topic in culture and then how that has influenced film. So it's nice. a little bit of commentary. It's casual, but also I like to dig in a little deeper to the meaning of horror because I think horror has a lot of really interesting and important things to say as a genre. And you can find me at chiaroscurohorror.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Chiaroscuro Horror, and I also have a Patreon. So if you listen and you have a few extra dollars to throw my way, that's always appreciated.
Your latest episode was The Wendigo, is that correct?
Well, that is actually an old episode from last year. It is.
Okay.
Because I'm not doing an episode this month, and so I've been trying to share things from last winter.
Okay.
The podcast was brand new also, so I'm there's a lot of people who probably haven't heard this stuff. So.
I hadn't heard it, and I was listening to it before this cast. That's The Wendigo.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a good one. If you guys don't know about the Wendigo, he's the wintertime monster.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Very creepy. Good stuff.
I was enjoying that.
Check out Chiaroscuro podcast and make it rain on the Patreon if you can. Before we get into it, let's do some housekeeping here real quick. Just a reminder that the January poll pick is posted on our Patreon website for you to vote upon. The theme for this January is going to be sort of our redemption month. Like we did January of this year, we kind of went deep into our back catalog and chose 3 movies that we would like to kind of re-review, talk about again, maybe get a little more in depth with. So the movies we chose are Evil Dead 2, Scream, and The Exorcist. And you have till the end of December to vote on those. Currently, Scream is winning. Evil Dead 2 is in second, and The Exorcist is trailing behind.
Oh, what the fuck?
What the fuck? I wonder who chose
Never
what.
Gonna cover The Exorcist, Bob.
Well, we already did. we did. You weren't there.
One
though.
of us did.
You weren't there.
One person did.
Somebody
One
did.
person.
Somebody somewhere did.
Uh-huh.
Also in glorious Patreon news, we have 2 brand new supporters that signed up this past week.
Yay!
We got to give some mad shouts outs to Tika and Tanya. And of course, we owe you the traditional straight chilling salute. This one is to you guys.
Slap me in the ass! Hold on! Slap me in the ass!
That is a bump I do not possess. So slap me in the ass, ladies. Thank you.
Each one of you grab a cheek and go ham. Justin, we've got a little thing going on called the Bracket of Blood. Why don't you give everybody an update?
Bracket of Blood. So we kicked off our Bracket of Blood last week. We are trying to decide what is the greatest horror film of possibly the greatest decade of horror ever to exist. Last week was our Killers division. It consisted of 28 films. A lot of people voted. We appreciate you if you voted and shared our Bracket of Blood. The winners of last week's division were Get Out, Green Room, Don't Breathe, Midsummer, The Invitation, Hush, and Happy Death Day. So all of those movies will be moving on to round number 2, which will be starting in January. December, we will be covering all of round number 1. What is live right now? The Monsters division.
Monsters.
So starting on Monday at midnight, we kicked off our Monster division. If you want to vote, you can go to straightchillingpodcast.com. There is a page there where it has all of these polls. The movies in the Monster division that you can vote on are One Cut of the Dead, Attack the Block, Shin Godzilla, Honeymoon, It Follows, Rare Exports, Under the Skin, Prometheus, What We Do in the Shadows, Let Me In, Spring, Krampus, whoop, whoop, A Quiet Place, It Comes at Night, Troll Hunter, Bird Box, Train to Busan, Annihilation, Willow Creek, Tusk, The Shape of Water, Cargo, It Chapter 2, Godzilla King of Monsters, Ex Machina, It, Sharknado, and Overlord. Woo, that's a lot of films.
Solid.
So 28 to be exact, split it up into 7 different polls. You have until Friday, 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time to vote if you would like to. And then next week, we will be kicking off the Haunters division once Monsters wraps up. So if you didn't know, this is something we'll be doing for a while. All month, we'll be doing round 1. We've got a couple more divisions to get through before we move on to round 2. So yeah, lots of people voting. Hashtag appreciate you. It's been a lot of fun so far. Some really tough choices. What We Do in the Shadows versus Krampus. That's pretty tough, man.
Yeah, I had to look at that one for a while. I was like, damn. I don't
Just
know.
waiting.
I don't know. And some of the winners from the last round were surprising. I think of the 7, I voted 2 correctly. Like 2 of the movies I voted on 1.
Really?
The rest of them I voted on did not.
Don't Breathe was a bit of a surprise to me, but a pleasant surprise. I was glad Green Room got the recognition it got. It won its division, and yeah, so I thought the winners were good movies. It's going to be even tougher round 2. Oh my God, I can't even imagine.
Speaking of Don't Breathe, wasn't that like the first show you joined us on, Nicole? Was Don't
Yes.
Breathe? Yeah.
Yes, and it's funny because now, well, 2 things. One, voting in this poll has made me realize how much stuff I haven't seen this decade. But also, when Don't Breathe popped up, I was like, I don't hardly remember this movie. I definitely did not vote for it.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I enjoyed it, but it's problematic.
It's just okay. It's just
I was surprised it got so much love. It was going against Split, Creep, and Scream 4. I was a Split man myself.
I was
but
Scream
it didn't
4
win.
boy.
Oh, you were?
Yep.
You weren't a Creep guy?
I definitely voted for Creep. That was the one I voted for. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Look at all of us, all split, and we didn't even pick the winner.
Look at that. Pun intended. So yeah, join us. Everybody get your votes in before 11:30 p.m. this Friday. That's when the Monsters bracket's going to close, and we're going to open up Monday with the Haunters. Also, in other news, there's a Joe Bob marathon on Shudder this Friday, the 13th, Friday the 13th, 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be hosting a watch party of that, much the same way we did last time. We're going to be using Zoom instead of Skype. So if you want to join us for this live watch, you just got to sign into Zoom, make a little free account, and then we're going to post a link to join the watch party on all of our social media platforms just before 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, before the show kicks off. So you guys can click on that link, hop into the chat, watch some Joe Bob. We'll talk about it live and in person. It's a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. We've been doing it pretty much every time he has done anything this year. We've been hosting some sort of live watch party. So check that out. And the last bit of news I have here. So the You Pick the Flick tier is going to reopen officially on Sunday, December 22nd at noon Eastern Standard
That's on
Time.
our Patreon page, correct, Bob?
Correct. That's going to be on our Patreon page. So if you're wondering, so we're talking about Mother tonight, which was chosen by Alex, a Patreon supporter. He signed up for the You Pick the Flick tier last time we opened it. It's a thing that we open quarterly. So every 3 months, we have 5 new spots for listeners to sign up and pick a movie for us to review. Any movie you want. And they typically go pretty fast. So if this is something you're interested in, like I said, the tier is going to reopen on Sunday, December 22nd at noon Eastern Standard Time. Remember that and try and grab a spot if you are interested. And that's going to do it for housekeeping. Let's go ahead and talk about...
This house has been kept.
It's been kept. Bob. That's you. That's your line. I'm not going to steal your line.
I know. I had to jump in there, Bob, before you just scooched over
Before we talk about what we've been watching.
Hey, gang, what you been watching?
See? All right.
What you been watching?
Juice, you want to kick us off? What you been watching?
Sure. It is the Christmas season. And so nothing really new. I love like going back to back like Halloween into Christmas season because it's just that time of the year where you get to like watch all your favorite like shit. I don't know. I just feel like I was saying, like when you get asked that question, like what's your favorite movie? And I was thinking about like what like movies have I just seen over it? And they're like usually like Halloween or Christmas movies because I want to watch them like every year. Yeah, so like I watched Home Alone, I watched Krampus, I watched Gremlins, and just all these like seasonal movies. So nothing new, but just movies that I love to watch again and again. Additionally, I'm replaying the Arkham Asylum, which is the first Batman game that came out. I forgot actually how like kind of spooky that game is because it's set in the actual like insane asylum, and like there are like some segments, especially like with the Scarecrow, where he's essentially just like Freddy Krueger and he creates these like horrific like nightmare landscapes that you have to like navigate through. And I was like, this is amazing. I completely forgot like how like horror kind of themed this was. So really enjoying that game. And also I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to like our immediate squad for like support. So like Gargantucast or Something Ghoulish or Nicole at Churros Girl. I always fuck your name up.
That's a tasty treat.
The Churros, yeah. The Churro podcast. No, but I've been trying to listen. And the reason I don't is because my mind just wanders. So like if it's like informational, I often have to be like, wait, I wasn't paying attention, rewind. Wait, I wasn't paying attention, rewind. So it takes me forever to get through a podcast. But I've been recently listening to Lore, which I know has been out for a while and is super popular. Mm-hmm. But I just started listening to it like for the first time or whatever. And I would like pick them at random. So I've listened to like maybe 4 or 5 episodes just to like complete random. And they all seem to be like nautical themed. So he's talking about like ghost ships. And then he was talking about like cannibalism out at sea and like just all these things. I was like, what's up with all this like nautical stuff? So that was a weird coincidence. So I hope when I'm flying home from Seoul that my plane doesn't crash and I have to like live out on the sea and eat people or something, because it was a weird thing that happened to me. But yeah, I've been enjoying that. It could.
Hey, I don't know. I think I could save your life, man.
I was thinking, I was like, could I eat a person like if I was out at sea? And like, I guess I could. I think I could. I think you got to live, you know, it's the law of the sea or whatever, you got to do it.
And then you're going to like love the flavor so much. That's all you're ever going to want to eat.
Maybe. Possibly. We'll see.
We've now come full circle. We're back to the Wendigo now with cannibalism.
Yes.
I know. That kind of made me think of it too. I was like, oh my God, what's up with all these themes I'm getting? I have to make that choice soon. Maybe I'm just being prepared. The universe is preparing me for this situation.
Nope. Hey, Nicole, what have you been watching?
Well, I'm pretty sure that last time I was on the show, we were watching MASH, and we are still watching MASH.
That's a lot of MASH.
Yeah. Oh my God.
We're on the second to last season and still enjoying it, but it's a long show. And we watch it like every night, pretty much. And so like I said, we're in Arkansas, we're hanging out with family. So I haven't been able to watch a ton of horror. There's been a lot of like family movies. Like we watched Downton Abbey movie with my mother-in-law. We watched Ernest Saves Christmas with my family.
Nice.
I haven't gotten to watch Gremlins or Krampus. So like, Justin, I'm glad you're holding it down for us. Cause I don't know if I'm going to get to. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get to.
Oh no.
We'll see. But I did get to watch one Christmas horror movie before we left on our trip. And that was All the Creatures Are Stirring. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
I've never seen that one.
Okay, it's a anthology, and I think I watched it on Shudder, but I don't think it was an exclusive. I'm not sure when it was released, maybe last year, but it was decent. Like it had kind of a cool wraparound story, like a typical anthology. There were good ones, there were not so good ones, but I felt like on the whole, it was pretty decent. Like definitely worth, a Yuletide watch, especially if you've watched all the standard Christmas horror movies. I think it's worth checking out for sure. And then the last thing I've been watching is, everybody's been on the Disney Plus train, which I wasn't planning on hopping on the Disney Plus train just yet. And then my sister-in-law, it did. My sister-in-law was like, oh, well, I already made you a login and I have 3 subscriptions for a year. And I was like, I'm on it. So I've been watching The Imagineering Story, and I mean, I'm a creative and I'm a Disney nerd, and every single episode of The Imagineering Story, I'm like, oh, I need to go work at Disney. It's very inspiring. It's super interesting. If you are into Disney at all, or you're a creative person at all, you got to watch it.
I've heard that from a lot of people. I haven't signed up for Disney Plus yet, but I kind of want to, almost just to watch that. And also that Jeff Goldblum show. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, I haven't checked that out yet, but I want to.
Yeah.
So what is that show about? Is it about working at Disney?
It is. So it's about the people who specifically are in charge of developing like the magic at the theme parks. So it's, creative directors and art directors and designers and engineers. Cool. And it's the people who are basically responsible for like bringing all of that, Disney amazing quality magic stuff to life and how they've done it and how amazing it is. There's been like high highs where they were getting all the attention from the company and like low lows where the company was like, y'all are just weirdos in the corner and we're not spending money on you. And yeah.
You weirdo creatives.
Yeah. So it's just really interesting how there's this like little scrappy group of people who at the time, what they were working on, they didn't even realize that it was like game changing in culture. And now, you look back on what they did and it's like, oh my gosh, they had no idea what they were doing. So it's very inspirational.
Cool. Very cool. I checked out the Christmas anthology installment, I guess you should probably call it, of Into the Dark, like a Hulu show, Into the Dark. I always watch these. I try to keep up with these. And the Christmas one is called A Nasty Piece of Work. And it's pretty solid. These are like typically hit or miss. They're all produced by Blumhouse's like TV side. But this particular one is basically about these two like mid-level employees at like Megacorp USA, and they're both sort of vying for a promotion. And the boss invites them over on Christmas Eve just to have dinner and some drinks, and he kind of pits them against one another and to like see who's willing to like sacrifice the most to get this position, and it gets like pretty hairy, and it kind of, if you've seen Cheap Thrills, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Cheap Thrills in a way, where you've got this super rich person just kind of throwing his weight around for his own entertainment and making these two seemingly decent humans betray one another just for a laugh. It's kind of got that going for it.
Yeah.
But pretty solid.
That sounds cool.
Pretty solid overall. It's not super Christmas related, other than it just kind of happens around Christmas. But it's one of their better ones, I would say, of the last 15 or so that they've done. It's one of the better ones. I would recommend it for sure. I also watched a movie called Spookies, which was recently put out by Vinegar Syndrome. So this is like
the old Vinegar Syndrome.
Yeah, they strike again.
We'll get into that.
They always do. They always do. This movie's like from the 80s. I guess it had like a really limited theatrical run, but then it lived on cable TV for quite a while. I think that's where most people ended up watching it. But I guess it's got some sort of cult status. It's like pretty kid friendly, actually. The whole time I was watching it, I was just like wanting to show this to like my nephew, because there's like the language is pretty clean. There's like no nudity. The gore is minimal. There's like tons of creatures, like practical creatures, and like the designs are pretty cool. And it's basically just these teens for no reason at all, really, wandering around this like giant house and getting killed by these random monsters. Like some of the monsters are just like farting for no reason. One of them is like this lady that turns into a giant spider thing. It's just kind of a lot of random stuff happening. But it's like goofy and entertaining. And I think if you have a kid who's like maybe interested in like Goosebumps or something like that, maybe throw on Spookies and see if they dig it, I think it'd be a good one. Yeah. Pretty solid. But that's what I've been watching. Let's go ahead and jump into the main event and get into the back of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
Oh, we are talking about Mother. Actually, I do. I'm sure this is unsurprising to people who listen to the show regularly, but I have a sample lined up. This is
sample.
Yes, yeah. This is the Danzig bio picture titled Mother. That
Yes.
we've long been waiting for.
That's the one I watched too. I also watched the Danzig documentary.
That's directed by Darren Aronofsky. Casting Jennifer Lawrence as Danzig was bizarre, but I did.
Brilliant. Yeah. Bold move. 5 stars.
So we're talking about Mother from 2017, directed by Darren Aronofsky, starring Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem, Ed Harris, and Michelle Pfeiffer. The plot is as follows. A couple's relationship is tested when uninvited guests arrive at their home, disrupting their tranquil existence. Round table real quick. Had you guys seen this movie before, and would you recommend people check it out? Juice, why don't you kick us off?
I had seen this once before. It was actually one of the first movies I watched when I came to Korea. I saw it in the theaters, and I hadn't seen it since. And the impression I got when I left that movie was I enjoyed the experience of it, I enjoy. Well, I thought it was a well-made film, but I didn't really want to watch it again. I remember specifically saying, I don't think I want to watch this movie again. Which, to be fair, can be consistent with some of his other films that I've seen. I'm torn. I like The Wrestler. I've never watched The Wrestler again. And I think it's good, but this dude puts you through the ringer in all of his movies. And he just does. And Requiem for a Dream is another one. Somebody had mentioned just a week or two ago, that was one of their favorite top 3 films in our voicemail segment. I was like, it's a well-made film, but I can't just be let's throw on Requiem for a Dream. My Mother's the same way. I mean, this movie, I think it's well-made. I think it's well-acted, but it's a tough watch. I mean, emotionally, and it's purposeful that way. So I think it's a good film. I think you should see it once, and then you can decide from there. But I do think it's worth a watch for sure.
Cool. Nicole, what about you?
So I had not seen this before. It's something that I knew I was going to watch eventually. I actually have a good friend who's also a horror nerd with me, and just recently she was like, "You haven't seen Mother? You have to see it." So, so when you guys asked me to be on, I was like, "Okay, well, I just need to make this happen because I need to see this movie anyway." And I knew that this movie had gotten kind of a lot of split reviews. You saw a lot of people said it was, brilliant and whatnot. And then I know there was a lot of backlash as well. And so I didn't know anything about it. I mean, all of the trailers were pretty ambiguous. So I went into it pretty blind, and I really enjoyed it. It, to me, it's a pretty intensely personal film for me, and I'll get into more about that later. You guys are you're gonna get to hear some of my personal stories on this episode.
Good.
But I think it's probably really important that you have a woman on this episode because it's so specific to kind of the female experience. So anyway, I mean, I have to say that, yes, I would recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it to horror normies. But anybody who likes, I wouldn't put certain people through this experience, but if you like serious horror that takes you to uncomfortable places, absolutely. And I will definitely be watching it again because now that I kind of know what it's about, I'm interested to dig in and discover more and more things. Now that I know what it is, I can start picking apart little things I didn't see the first time around.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I'd seen this once before in the theaters when it first came out. And upon my first viewing, I wasn't a very big fan of it. I didn't a lot of it I didn't like connect. Like, it took me a while after having seen the movie to kind of like figure out what the hell it was driving at. It just like felt sort of all over the place as I was watching it. And also, like, this movie made me incredibly anxious, like almost from the very beginning. And that like never left. I was so like just physically uncomfortable watching this movie. And we'll talk about all that stuff later, but it's just not enjoyable for me anyway to watch this movie. I would recommend people check it out.
It's funny. Yeah. It's funny that you say that. I got anxious about rewatching this movie. I was like, shit, I gotta watch Mother again. Yeah. And like, I was like, I gotta like prepare myself.
Kind of sweating it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely the intent of the movie, though. It's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. But it's one of those things that is, you probably won't throw on just any random afternoon. You know, you kind of have to be in the right mood for it. And I recommend you check it out. It's incredibly well crafted. And just be aware going into it that it's not like linear plot wise. It's not crafted like a typical plot would be. So keep that in mind. But yeah, it's worth checking out. I'm going to drop the spoiler warning, and we can go ahead and talk about the finer points of Mother.
Spoiler warning.
You were absolutely warned, so, you know, you can't say you weren't. So this whole movie is slim as far as like the cast goes. There's really like 4 main characters. I guess 2 main characters. 2 more come into play, and then there's sort of a large cast of extras that just sort of come in and out of the house. It's sort of like, it starts off with Bardem. None of these characters really have names, and they don't refer to each other like with proper names in the movie. Javier Bardem is just called the poet.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, people referred to him as the poet. I legit
didn't even notice that.
Oh, this is really important, actually.
Yeah.
The way when you read the cast of characters, the characters' names are really important.
Yeah,
interesting.
It's basically starts off with Bardem, and he has this like crystal in his hand, and he places it on a little stand on a mantle, and then the house that the rest of the movie takes place in sort of forms around him. And the last thing that kind of forms is Jennifer Lawrence. She sort of like pops up sleeping in bed all peacefully, and she gets up and walks around the house, and she's searching for Javier Bardem, and she finally finds him. And it's really just them two for the first few minutes of the movie, and then some strangers show up and kind of disrupt their life a little bit, and then more strangers show up, and then more strangers show up, and they just like are very intrusive, and like force themselves into their home, and there's a lot of tension that comes from that. I think it probably would be a good thing to say, like, like in order to talk about this movie, it's a giant allegory. So like, getting that out of the way.
Let me read off how the cast is presented.
Sure.
Jennifer Lawrence is labeled as Veronica. I don't know what's up with that. But then Javier is him.
What?
She
Mother.
Should be Mother. She's Mother. She's not Veronica.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that is incorrect.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever I'm looking at is wrong. Okay.
Mother.
Javier.
Lowercase.
Sorry. Javier is him. Michelle Pfeiffer, woman. Ed Harris, man. And then all these extras are oldest son, cupbearer, herald, younger brother, fool, zealot, counselor, damsel, wanderer. Like, so it's just like, okay, it like definitely puts it in a different light.
Yeah. Do you notice anything different about him in the cast?
Not in what I'm looking at.
Okay. Well, all of the characters are
capital
lowercase, but him is capital.
I gotcha. Okay.
Which is
I don't know why
important.
this says Veronica. That's really dumb. They really fucked up on this.
Yeah, somebody got some shit wrong. Veronica Vaughn.
Yeah. But that's yeah, so it's this whole like metaphor for like God. Javier is God.
Yeah, it's biblical allegory.
Yes.
And everyone else around him is like his followers, like his like religion, like I guess Christianity in a way or whatever, humanity.
Well, Jennifer Lawrence is Mother Nature. Javier
his
Bardem
mother, she's
is God. And then the first two people that we meet that come into the home are going to be Adam and Eve. Which that's Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer. And then their two sons come into the home, and one of them kills the other, Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
And then as you go throughout the movie, all these other characters do come into play, and like they most of them manifest after he writes his book, which would be the Bible. And then there's sort of like, I mean, the last act of this movie is just chaos. It's like pure chaos, and a lot of it happens very quickly in a way that it makes it hard to like pick up on a lot of what I think is trying to be represented. But eventually, Jennifer Lawrence does become pregnant and gives birth to a son, and that it would be Jesus Christ, who is murdered in a horrific scene, and like as an infant murdered. And then like immediately after that, you see like the Catholic Church form, and then they're like actually eating the baby, like
communion.
Yeah, but they're like, all right,
we're just hopping, we're just jumping right into that.
Yeah, so it covers so much, but yeah, what do you got?
I was gonna say the first time, and how I would recommend people watching this is when I watched this film for the very first time, I knew nothing about any of it, like the plot or like the allegory or anything. And it wasn't until like I was finished and like kind of looked up, like there were things like obviously even towards the end where everything's like destroyed, like they say things like, who are you? And he's like, I am I, or I am him, or whatever. Like, I mean, there are things where I was like, okay, this is, you know, some kind of like allegory about it, but it wasn't like so blatantly obvious to me the first time. Like obvious, I was like, okay, like, but when you experience it the first time, like you were saying, it doesn't narratively make sense, but at the first half kind of does. So like it starts off before he writes his Bible or whatever. It actually does have like this narrative story where it's horrifying in a very anxious kind of way, where these people just kind of invade this home, where it's like Javier and Jennifer Lawrence, and it's their home together. And it's kind of out, like, you know, isolated. And this guy shows up one night and he thinks they're a bed and breakfast, or that's what he says. And then Javier like wants to invite him to stay because he's polite. And then Jennifer Lawrence like doesn't, because she's scared he's a stranger or whatever. And then that dude's wife shows up, and then they kind of wreck the house and the kids come in. So like the first time I was just experiencing it from that like emotional level, where it was all about like the anxiety. And I think that's a good way to experience, because I felt like I could feel the emotions more purely when I didn't know, like, this is an allegory for the church or for God or for, I felt like, oh my God, that baby has been ripped apart and is now being consumed. And I wasn't thinking like, it's very like obvious, but like, I wasn't thinking like, that's Jesus Christ and that's communion. I was just like experiencing the visuals I was given and this, like the narrative I was giving, like from an emotional level, like purely. And then once I had experienced that in like a pure form of like terror and anxiety and horror, and then to be able to take that and to put it into this like picture, like this narrative of like of a real life tangible thing, like, oh, the church or something like that. Like then I was able to like see it in a new light, like, oh my God, because then I was able to associate those pure emotional feelings that I had felt with something that I was familiar with, like from life, that like I have experienced, and like see how other people like see this entity or like this. experience like from a real life perspective. And I was just like, oh my God, that's really powerful. Or I felt. So I would recommend to anyone, like, don't go in like knowing like what's going on. Like just kind of go in and experience it. Cause I thought that was really powerful.
If you made it this far into the podcast, it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too late.
Nicole, what do you think about this movie? What do you got?
So I was definitely looking for the structure because I could tell, I was like, this isn't real. I can tell this isn't real. I can tell that this is a framework for something else. I had theories, and I was kind of looking for something that it wasn't, which I'll talk about a little more later. But I started to figure out that it was the creation and like the biblical allegory about the time she gives birth. Well, a little before she gives birth, when the whole house turns to chaos and there's like women being trafficked and wars, like, because it starts out really small and then it just progresses very quick. Like every room she goes into, like humanity gets worse and worse and worse. And I thought, and him, he always throughout the movie is putting people first. He uses a lot of language like, you know, they have no place to go. They need to be welcome in our home. We need to grieve with them. Like we have to forgive them. Like very obviously he's like reaching out to these people. And, you know, constantly mother is like, why am I not enough? And so like those little things I knew meant something. So by the time we got to the hordes of people with his photograph, and there's very clearly like altars and shrines throughout the house, that's when I started to kind of figure it out. And then, yeah, when they killed the baby and consumed the baby, I was like, okay, this is full on the Christian story, and I'm here for it. And I find it really fascinating because Darren Aronofsky is an atheist. But his last movie was Noah. And I really enjoyed Noah as well. It was a little bit controversial, I think, within like the Christian community. But I was stoked for it because I was like, well, he's a really talented filmmaker. He's going to take this story and like put his creative spin on it. And I feel like as a film fan, as a Christian, like I'm going to be able to like get some good stuff out of this. And I did. And so I'm just really fascinated that he is so interested in this like Christian narrative that he doesn't necessarily like subscribe to as a belief system. So I don't know if he's going to continue on this, trail, or if it's a framework he connects with, but,
dude, he should do like a David story.
That would be great. But yeah, I just, so I had sort of figured it out, but then when the credits rolled and I read the cast list, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. This is really great. And I don't know if you guys noticed also, I went and read a few articles about it, but tried not to go like too deep yet. But there is a scene where when man and woman get there, because of course they get there and they're like messing everything up and like not being kind. And mother tells them not to go into his office. And they go in there. They go into the one room they're not supposed to go into. And they break the jewel that is essentially like the forbidden fruit. Yeah. And I was like, oh, like, it's so great. I didn't see it at the time, but I was like, it's so great. So great.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah. It's pretty cool to go into it, not knowing that it's going to be a big allegory, and then later reflecting upon it and being like, oh, wow, holy cow. Like watching it for the second time, picking up on like little lines that they drop that just hold so much more weight when you know what the filmmaker's trying to communicate. Because like whenever right after mother and him allegedly make love, and then she finds out that she's pregnant, him or he or whatever gets like inspired and he starts writing frantically. And she just says, well, I don't want to interrupt. I'll go start on the apocalypse now. And that holds like so much more weight. But when she says it in the movie, she just means she's going to go clean up the house because it's dirty because all the rude people messed it up. But it holds so much more weight if you know what he's really driving at. Later on, somebody, like one of the random people that breaks into their house says, as Jennifer Lawrence tries to kick them out, he says, but the poet says this is everyone's house. Which again holds a lot more weight. And then at the very end of the movie, essentially like as the apocalypse has come and gone, like Jennifer Lawrence she like runs down in the basement, and she lights the whole house on fire. When seemingly the metaphorical world burns up and there's nothing left, and he's like carrying her body upstairs and lays her on what's left of the bed, and he says, nothing is ever enough. I couldn't create if it was, and I have to. That's what I do. That's what I am. Like he has to create. He's a creator.
That was a powerful line.
Yeah. Like
it's like you can't create if it's like she's like nothing's ever enough
you're
for you. And he's like, I couldn't create if I could. Yeah, if it was.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
And to like think about the meaning of that, and I don't know much about Christianity, so pardon my ignorance. But like
you heathen scum.
God isn't supposed to have needs, right? He is a perfect being. He is love incarnate. So to like think that he needs to create, it's not that he chose to, but like he needs to, is really interesting to think on. And also like,
well, and not only that need, but like the need, like, and to see it and that's why this movie is so powerful, to personify so many things that are talked about in a very kind of floaty way, like, like God and stuff like that. But to have like a face to it, and like to and the way that these people act is amazing. So to see like these emotions, but like the need for, even when you're thinking about God, like God makes creatures that like praise him all the time, like constantly, like nonstop, and he like needs the approval of like human beings, like the things he's created, or like not the approval, but like the attention and the love or whatever.
The worship.
Yeah.
He seeks that out. Yeah. And like to personify that in a person and to see it play out into where he like kind of, or even Jennifer Lawrence says like, you never loved me. You only loved that I loved you, like unconditionally or whatever. And to see that personified was really powerful. And like, I don't know, it's just really, really
cool. Yeah, it's a complex view of God and Christianity. Like,
I think that's a light way to put it.
To say the least.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's super easy. It would be super easy to get offended by this movie. But again, you have to consider like if you're a Christian, but you have to consider like who made it. And obviously he has criticisms of religion and of the idea of God. And I feel like just watching that played out, I don't know. I just find it super interesting and kind of beautiful. And the structure does give you kind of room to play with that, again, without the audience really knowing it until the end. And then it becomes even more challenging for sure.
When I watched this movie, well, kind of both times, to be totally honest. But the first time I didn't know that Javier Bardem was essentially God, but like he's the villain in this movie. Like,
oh yeah,
he is, but I wanted to touch on that a little bit because of the way they do the people, and obviously he is, but watching it the second time, obviously it's easier to like say fuck, Javier, fuck him or whatever, because the things he does is so egregious. But like Mother is very flawed too. I mean that's the two people that you're dealing with. Like from their perspective, and she's actually flawed too, but it's in a much more sympathetic way. So like his thing has to do a lot with like his hubris, to where like he wants to create these things that impress all these other people, and he gets that adoration, and it kind of feeds off him, and he's willing to sacrifice Mother to get it. Like you know, she's treated poor, like you clean this stuff, but at the same time, she's like, if you take the allegory away and say like, let's look at these like characters, and like as like a woman and like as a person, she has a bit of the same kind of hubris too, to where like she wants to be like she is creating the house, so she's restoring it, and she's doing it for him. Like she is a creative like entity, but she's doing it for him, and instead of seeking like the approval or the adoration of like underlings, like what God is doing or Javier is doing, all of her things is to please him. So it's like it's the same kind of personality, but just focused differently. So where like she, like no matter what, she sacrifices herself for him, and he is always sacrificing her for the, like
for him.
But they're both kind of like prideful and like arrogant a little bit, especially in the way that she deals with like the people. I mean, not arrogant, she's not arrogant, but she's like prideful. She's like overtly like naive. She's like never like self-assertive. I don't know, like she is flawed.
Yeah, but she's flawed,
but it's more sympathetic
that she's
obviously
easily taken advantage of, and maybe doesn't stand her ground until it's almost too late, or when she does. Because honestly, like throughout this whole movie, she's telling people to leave her house, but she's not the one. Or
her unconditional love for him, even by the time like the baby's born, like having any trust in him at that point is like ridiculous.
Well, I mean,
because obviously people have invaded your house
because he asked to hold the baby, and she does not give it to him, but she falls asleep and he takes it.
Yeah, but that's like the final point, though. Up until that point, she's still really like relying on him. And,
but then
like,
it's not just about her; it's about her baby. So she will sacrifice herself, but she draws the line at herself. Right. I don't think she's as flawed as you're painting her to be. Not perfect.
Yeah, I don't know if like flawed maybe isn't the right word. But yeah, I think she has a real lack of agency and a lack of strength. Like she's always asking him to get the people out of her house instead of just like taking control and doing it herself, which again, if he's God, she's Mother Earth, she's still his creation. So ultimately she still plays the same role that all of the humans play. And I would say too that he is a villain, but also he just kind of like is what he is, which is how the Bible presents God. Like it presents him as like always loving towards humanity as far as like the big picture goes. But there's been major ups and downs. But one thing that is consistent is that humanity is a mess and will always be a mess. And when you leave humans to their own devices, it's going to go bad every time. And I think that really rings true for sure. And apparently, and I learned this from the Faculty of Horror podcast about this movie, which I recommend because they're super smart and they have a lot of cool things to say about Mother. But apparently, Aronofsky is also like a big time environmentalist. So, you know, he is basically saying like Mother is just trying to like make things beautiful and make things functional. And we as humanity are always going to come in, make ourselves at home, destroy her work, and leave things in shambles. So, you know, again, it's very, I think, consistent with like the overarching message of the Bible. One thing that I didn't realize until I thought about it, by the way, did you guys notice that the people on the sink, people that kept sitting on the sink, and she was like, it's not braced yet, don't sit on it. Mm-hmm. So of course, they're bouncing on it. And then the water line breaks. And that's when everybody leaves the house, which essentially is the flood.
Cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
Pretty good, yeah. Yeah, because that is the first break or whatever. They leave the house and then they're able to that's when they have sex and then she becomes pregnant after the fact, right? Yeah.
So it's like
or whatever.
Adam and Eve or man and woman and all their people show up and slowly cause chaos and water. And all of a sudden, him and mother are alone again for a while.
Yeah.
And then after they get pregnant and he writes his amazing book, all these people show up, you know?
Yeah, it's good.
And among those people, Kristen Wiig shows up for a few minutes.
The cast in this movie, great people just keep showing up in this movie. It's crazy.
Yeah, she's like his agent. I looked her up on IMDb and she's listed as the Herald. So I guess she is helping spread his word, shout his word, as his agent or publicist, which kind of makes sense, I guess, there. But she, towards the end of the movie, she just is executing people and then she gets blown up by a bomb. It's like there's literal war happening in this house. It's insanity. I like seeing her though. I like Kristen Wiig.
Yeah, it was a great, in a super serious movie, having somebody like her in it, I think was a nice little plot twist.
Yeah, I agree.
It's fun. It's funny to compare those two things to where the first half of this movie I was saying is more tangible, and it's funny to say it's bad, and you're from her perspective, especially even Michelle Pfeiffer does an amazing job as woman. I'm just fuck this bitch. If this was my house, I would be throwing that chick out or whatever. But just from the perspective of you're this is a mess. But in comparison to what happens in the second half of the movie, even just story wise, you're if you could just take the first half of this movie without the allegory, that could be a movie. People come in, they're wrecking the house.
I thought it was going to be a cult movie.
Yeah, exactly. It could get if you took the God aspect, that story could go a bunch of different places as just a tangible story or whatever. But you're man, this is bad. But then to compare it to what to just the utter literal war and people tunneling through, and you're oh my God, let's go back to the first half. Back to the first half. Where shit made sense.
Worse and worse.
Yeah.
And that's what, and not knowing that this movie, anything about that, experiencing that the first time, I was just what the fuck is going on? Once war breaks out in the house, you're just oh my God, what am I experiencing? It's a crazy emotional roller coaster, man.
It is. So we have to talk about the female issues in this movie and what I thought it was going to be.
Let me offer the female perspective real quick.
Yeah, take it away. Deuce, take it away.
No, I'm not jumping into that.
So when I first started watching it, like I said, I could tell that there was something else going on. And my initial thought was, okay, this is a Rosemary's Baby situation, because these people are worshiping this guy and they're just showing up out of nowhere, and poor mother is getting gaslit like Rosemary, but she wasn't pregnant yet. So I was I'm not sure how this is going to work out. But I thought that maybe she had possibly had a miscarriage and was having fallout from that. Or I thought, well, is she dying during childbirth? And at the end of the movie, we're going to see her in the hospital. It's going to take us to the hospital. And this has just been in her head. All this stuff has been in her head. So these random people popping in, because Man is a doctor. I don't know if you remember or not, but Man is a doctor.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, is Man her doctor? And then Woman just magically shows up and she's did you know this guy had a wife? And I was is that a midwife? Is she dying in a hospital bed giving birth right now?
Good
That's
thought,
what I thought.
Nice.
Yeah. And because this is where, and I told you I was going to share personal stories. So I went through a miscarriage about 6 years ago. And so ever since then, I've been way more sensitive to just pregnancy and childbirth and infant loss, like all those kind of like themes in film in general. So I just naturally sort of like picked up on that stuff. And especially when she's like, after a man has like been in their bathroom and the toilet's clogged and she's like plunging the toilet and there's this like mass in the toilet that like squirts blood out into the toilet. Yeah. I was like,
that was rough.
I was like, man, I don't know where we're going, but I was like, there is like some serious female trauma, childbearing stuff going on. And so even though that's not ultimately like what it's about, I feel like sort of all those things are at play. And just the idea of, you know, it seems like she's going insane. That's what you think. And there's a lot of, like I said, like with postpartum depression and all of those issues, it would seem that that's maybe what's happening to her. And there is a story, and again, I did a little research and found this out, but there's a story called The Yellow Wallpaper. Was written by a woman in, I think, the 1800s. And it is about a woman, let me see here. See. It's a work about a hysterical woman whose physician husband confines her to a room in their home, driving her slowly insane via infantilization. So this woman is just in her room and she basically starts like seeing stuff in the yellow wallpaper. And apparently that story was a big influence on this movie. And if you'll notice, the color yellow is a big deal. Like she's drinking that yellow liquid. She's literally painting the walls yellow. So there's the biblical allegory, but then there's this whole other layer of like just being a woman and motherhood and all of that stuff. And I think that's what I'm most interested to like watch it again and figure out like how those two things play together, and like being a creator, being a woman, being married to a creator, how all that works together. Like, I don't know exactly how it all fits, but like there's bigger stuff I think going on in this movie with all of that.
That was definitely something that puzzled me when watching this movie. Is like, what is that bizarre yellow liquid that she's drinking? And then once she does actually get pregnant, she pours the rest of it into the toilet and flushes it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? Because the second time I watched
I assumed it was like a way
what does that
for
mean
her
in the Bible?
Keeping her from like not get pregnant. That's what I thought it was. I thought it was like a way for her to,
and then
like,
that thing in the toilet, I was like, is there a creature hiding like in the pipes? Or like, what is that? What is going on? But that makes a lot of sense, actually. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for
and apparently, I guess Darren Aronofsky like has he knows what the yellow powder is, but he said that he won't tell anybody. So there are a lot of theories out there about it. There's some really interesting ones. So I would encourage you to go down the rabbit hole about what the yellow powder means or is.
Yellow Powder Rabbit Hole. Band name.
Yes.
Cool. So anything else you guys want to touch on before we give our final ratings on Mother?
I just we mentioned it, but like the baby scene is fucking like,
it's hard to watch.
What happens? She finally gets birth, and then that's finally the point where like she turns kind of on Javier himself. Like up to that point, she's like giving him all the slack. She's like really kind of like bending to his will, or at least like pleading with him, like, please kick everybody out, or please like don't do this. Once the baby's born, though, she turns on him, and like he wants to like show the baby like to the masses that are waiting like outside their bedroom door. And she's like, no, I'm not giving you the baby. I'm not. But like she's stuck. She can't get out of the room. She can't do anything. So once she falls asleep, he takes the baby and gives it to the masses. And there's a scene where they're like fucking crowd surfing this this newborn baby, literally just like passing it through the ranks, and then they like break it in half. Like you hear like the snap, and then once she's able to like get to the thing, there's this brief like priest or whatever. He's like, he gives the same speech that Javier gave at the son's wake. So Javier, they asked Javier to speak at the son's wake, and the priest, so like as like the church are like giving the same like, oh, don't mourn, he's with like God, or like what, like this whole like kind of bullshit spiel.
That was brutal.
Yeah. And then she's like, so he says like, he's not dead. And she's like relieved, like, oh my God. And then he like gives this same bullshit speech that like Javier gave. And she like, it like just like dawns on her. And then like, there's this pile of like fucking mutilated flesh. And like the masses are literally like eating the baby. That is like some of the most brutal fucking shit you will ever see. That when I saw that for the first time, I remember just like the gut drop, like how horrific it is. Oh my God, it's nasty, dude.
I think for me, like I had, like I said, I had sort of figured it out by then. So I was like, I knew that was going to happen. Yeah. So I think when I saw it, I mean, it was more graphic than I expected it to be, but it didn't really shock me because it's when they're in the room, like right after she gives birth, and he's like, oh, the people just want to see him. Like they want to see our son. I was like, oh, okay. I know where this is going.
Sure they do. Even after that, mother kind of gets assaulted, and everybody gangs up on her, starts beating her up, and then Javier like runs in and kind of knocks them off of her, and they have this conversation, and he's, even then, after the baby is dead and after they almost beat her to death, even then he's like, we have to find a way to forgive them, and maybe like this, what has happened could change everything. And it's like, man, this dude is crazy.
Well, yeah, because they're like crying, and he's like, see, they're mourning, see, they're sorrowful. And like so many times too, we talk about like that whole, like the politeness in horror, like, and how it gets you like,
gets you killed.
It gets you killed most of the time. And now God, I don't know how this always happens, but another thing I like about this movie, and I mentioned it like a little bit, but it reminded me of this fucking scene especially that scene we're talking about right now in Sunny in Philadelphia, where always. I think it's like Charlie or Dennis is talking to Mac, who's like super Catholic or whatever, and they're breaking it down. And so they're like just painting this like very realistic picture of like Christian beliefs. And they're like, so you think Jesus Christ comes back to life every Sunday in the form of a cracker, and then you all can like eat him like it's body, and like just painting it in such like a picture, like just like black and white,
very literal.
Literal picture is like, it's like when I watched this for the second time, the first time I was like absolutely mortified, but the second time that popped into my head, that scene where they're talking about like, you think Jesus Christ comes back every Sunday in the form of a cracker, and then you eat him, like, and just like painting some of these like Christian beliefs. Like I said, like you talk about these things, and they're like in this like metaphysical realm, like God and like all these things, but to like see them in like tangible forms, like people are eating this baby, or like the way Javier, like just like seeing people's emotions on their faces, it really paints things that are usually thought of or discussed in like this kind of outer realm. Like it's like, it makes them grounded, and it makes you be able to like understand and relate to those things, I think, in a more like human nature. I don't know.
Yeah,
I agree. And I think that's why I really like it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Just to touch on the very final scene of this, and then we can get into our ratings. After the house and everything is burnt up, he's talking to Mother, and he says, I need one more thing. I need your love. And then he rips her heart out of her chest and like peels away, because the heart's like kind of burned. He kind of peels away the burnt stuff, and it's the crystal from the beginning of the movie that was broken. And he walks over to the mantle and sets the crystal on the mantle again. And that's when the credits roll, and it basically alludes to the fact that this whole affair is going to repeat, and it's a kind of an endless cycle.
There's a new woman.
Yeah,
it does start to regrow. So like the house, like just like the beginning of this movie, and there's a woman that looks like just like Jennifer Lawrence, but she's a little bit different.
Yeah,
and she like turns around, and like it starts to play out like that first scene, like exactly the same again.
And he begins to create. So that's how the movie ends. Let's go ahead and rate.
And he says something too, like he says like let's try this, or like maybe I can do it this time, or something about like knowing that he has failed like many times or something, and then he's gonna try again. That's like to do the same exact thing. That's
which makes you wonder, like, does it play out exactly the same way every time, or did we just watch what we know? Mm-hmm. And then the next time he does it, it'll still end in a dumpster fire, but like it'll play out differently. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, he does explain.
It kind of made me think of The Matrix.
He does explain earlier in the movie that he lost everything that he ever had in a house fire, and then the crystal was the only thing left. So this has happened at least once prior, we know for sure. But like, how many times before that potentially? It's interesting thing
we don't know
to think on. So out of 5, let's go ahead and rate this bad boy. Justin, why don't you kick us off? How do you feel about Mother?
Man, this is tough. I've really enjoyed talking about it though, as much as I like dreaded watching it again. And it was tough to watch it again. I mean, even though I knew all the beats of it, it was like, especially the second half is more just like wild and stuff. And, but the first half, like really like that shit I hate. And most people barging into your house and like tearing shit up, and like you want them to leave, but you can't get them to leave. Like the shit like gave me like real anxiety. And so even though I knew all the beats of this movie, it still affected me like deeply. Like it was difficult to watch. So in that kind of aspect, it doesn't have like a huge accessibility. It's really brutal, but it's like brilliantly acted, brilliantly filmed, and crafted. Just talking about it, and like, and I don't know how the pure like emotions that I'm able to feel and then attach to something that I've grown up with kind of my whole life and reflect on that. It's definitely like gives you so much to chew on after the fact, which is I really appreciate. Makes it like really difficult for me to rate, because again, I don't ever want to watch this again. I don't want to like I don't want to watch it anymore. Damn, but it's good. It's like just in its art form, it's like really good. Shit. Oh man. I'll give it a 5, I guess. I can't really knock it for anything except the fact that it like drives me crazy, but it's supposed to. It's like supposed to. Like it's what he intends. He doesn't want to, like, which is weird to think. And also too, something we didn't quite touch on that I appreciate is like, because it's told it's linear, but like I feel like it's a story that's told more through emotions than it is told through like a traditional story sense. Like,
that's a good point.
You have a beginning, middle, and end, and these people go through this arc. And so it's more of this like emotional journey, and it's a rough emotional journey, but it's a different way to tell a story. And because it's not the traditional way, it feels like your body almost fights it a little bit. Well, no, that's not like how you tell a story. Like just how we're like, I don't know, we're designed to interpret information, but I don't know. I think it's actually kind of brilliant. So fuck it, 5-star.
All right,
Mother.
A fuck it 5-star from Juice. Nicole, how are you feeling out of 5?
So I've been thinking about this for a couple days, and I'm like, oh gracious, what am I going to rate this? Basically, same thing Justin said. I mean, it's beautifully shot, beautifully acted. I mean, it's chock full of meaning, which I'm really, really a sucker for. And also to add to what you were saying, Justin, about telling a story in a different way. Like, it just came to me that even that's kind of biblical, because Jesus would tell parables in order to get at something else. He would tell a story that seems like it doesn't have anything to do with what's going on, but it gets right to like the heart of what he wants to say. And I think that this movie is very much like that. And I appreciate that. So I don't know if I can give it a 5, but I will give it a 4.5. My only criticism, even though I love a good metaphor, I do feel like this movie is a little bit too on the nose, like one-to-one metaphor. I would probably like a little bit more ambiguity that like made me do a little bit more work to kind of figure it out. But that's a very minor criticism. I think that Darren Aronofsky has kind of a tendency to sort of pivot to just like worst case scenario. Like, I remember the first time I watched Requiem for a Dream, which was recently, like within the last couple of years, I finally watched it.
Oh, you poor soul.
Yeah. And because I've been sort of avoiding it, you know, and it was rough, but also when I got to the end of it, and like, I want to give him a break because I think it was his first movie. But by the time you get to the end of it, it's like, listen, kids, if you do drugs, you end up being a hooker, you will lose your arm, you will go to prison, or you will be in an insane asylum. Do not do drugs. Like, it just felt like very dramatic. And so
that's true.
I feel like Mother is a little bit that way, with just like the attitude towards humanity that like, there's nothing redeemable. We will rip your house apart. Our children will murder each other in the living room. We will cause wars. We will traffic women, which we do all these things. But also, it's like, dude, like maybe just take just a half a step back. So
well, also, we make fun horror podcasts that entertain the masses.
Why wasn't that included, Aronofsky?
And we can be kind and selfless, but I understand it's a 1,000-foot view, whatever. So those are very, very like minor criticisms. I do look forward to revisiting this. So 4.5 for me.
Cool. I don't think I can give this a perfect 5 either. Honestly, the 2 times I watched this movie, I had like 2 pretty different reactions. The first time I watched it, I was like, I didn't have the key to unlock the meaning from this movie, which is like, it's the Bible, dude. So the second time I watched it, I was like, yeah, duh, it's the Bible, dude. So the first time I was, I kind of, what I took away from it was like, climate change. I was like, he's talking about climate change. That's what he's kind of driving at. And that's a topic that I believe is like very worthy of having a discussion or like making a film about. But after watching it, I was just like uncomfortable for 2 hours, and I was like, there's got to be a better way to talk about that. Having like the key upon the second viewing is like, yeah, it's pretty on the nose. Like once you have that, like the hits just kind of keep on coming, and you're like, you're checking off the boxes, and you're like, okay, I get it. But the thing that kind of stood out to me the most upon my second watching was like, growing up in the South, which is something that I have done. You're sort of inundated with Christianity, and that there are just churches everywhere. And, I've definitely, like I said, I don't know that I know a ton about Christianity, but I've definitely gone to church several times. And like when you discuss God, it's never in a way that like makes you ponder his motives or the fact that he even has a motive. Like it's just very interesting to watch them take God very, very literally and put him in the form of a man and just say, okay, let's have a little experiment. Let's see what happens. Let's drop God in the form of a man in this movie and just kind of let God be God and create. And it's just sort of a different lens to view the Bible through in that way, I guess. In that yes, he is all about giving and sacrificing for the people, but is there a certain line that gets crossed where maybe he's giving too much? And like, what is there? Is there a line? Is there any sort of negative effects of that? Obviously, he has sacrificed in context of this movie. Now, he's sacrificed everything multiple times over and over again, and it's not because he chooses to, but he has a general like need to create. And I just think it's just interesting to see the Bible through that lens, because it's something that is from where I'm sitting not a typical way to look at it. You know. I don't know. It's interesting, and I think this movie has layers and does warrant multiple viewings. Just they're all going to be very uncomfortable viewings, and I think primarily because of that, I'm going to give it a 4, because this movie is just like so damn uncomfortable, which I get is the point, but it is a little like, I don't know, much for me personally. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. That's going to put our aggregate at a 4.5. And let's go ahead and jump over into our Rotten Tomatoes segment and see what the critics and users think about Mother.
Certified fresh to death.
All right, let's hop into our Rotten Tomatoes segment. We are talking Mother from 2017. Whoa, nice big total count from the critics over here. 358 critics have rated this movie. That's really high on the critic count. So we're going to go around the table, and everyone's going to try to guess what they think the critics rated this overall Rotten Tomatoes score. Let's start with Nicole. Nicole, what do you think the overall score on Mother is?
Oh, geez. This is really difficult. Like, I feel like Aronofsky always gets like, you know, the acclaim, but also I know people hated this movie. So I'm going to say 60.
60. Okay. And Robert?
I think if I had to guess, more people like it than they hate it, but it is definitely polarizing. I'm going to go a little bit above Nicole and roll with a 69, please.
69 straight chillin' spesh. Bob is going to take it with the straight chillin' special 69.
Get out
it
of
is
town.
69, Bob. It is 69%.
All we had to do was
Wow.
talk
Oh my
about a
God.
Bible movie, and we're 69.
That is hilarious. That is hilarious. This poster on Rotten Tomatoes is really cool. It's just Javier. He's sitting in a chair and he's holding a sphere, maybe the world.
Is it the one with
his
the
hands.
flames?
Oh,
And the
yeah.
flames,
Yeah.
looks like painted or something. I don't know. It's kind of hypnotizing me. The critic consensus for Mother. Yes. The critic consensus is there's no denying that Mother is There's no denying that Mother is the thought-provoking product of a singularly ambitious artistic vision, though it may be too unwieldy for mainstream taste. You fucking normies can't get it.
Yep.
Can't get it.
You can't get it. So yeah, 69. It is not certified fresh. I don't know. It's fresh, but it's not certified fresh. So maybe 70%. I don't know. I really need to lock down what makes certified.
One of these years.
One of these years. It's not like we've been doing this for 5 years. Jesus. Let's jump into the audience score. Oozer ratings. 24,499 oozers have rated this movie. Bob, I'll let you go first. What do you think the oozers have to say about Mother?
Mother. Probably a little bit lower than the critics, maybe. I'll go with a 65.
65. Nicole, how you feeling on the oozer ratings?
Yeah, I feel like they probably liked it less than the critics. I feel like they probably got to the end and they were like, it's the Bible? Lame. So I'm going to say like an even 50. I think this movie just split people right down the middle. 50.
Whoa, what a week. First, Bob nailed it with the 69. Now, Nicole nails it with a 50%. It is 50%. Torn down the middle. 50%
Dang.
on the audience score. Yeah, I mean, it's not an accessible film by any means.
No.
It's just well crafted and well acted and well thought out. So, I mean, it's like, gotta respect that. But I
also feel
I would
like-
never... I would never like knock anybody for saying like, I hate Mother. I'd be like, I liked it, but I could completely understand that. Like, it's not one of those movies that's like, I can't imagine people hating it. It's like, no, that makes sense.
People don't like it when like they think a movie is one thing and then it ends up being something else. People
True.
get real upset about that instead of just like being along for the ride, you know?
Yeah. It's like, you tricked me, you son of a bitch.
Yeah. I'm looking at you, The Village. Everybody's like, ugh.
Well, okay. Yeah. I understand that.
I'm a Village apologist. So.
It's actually pretty good. It's not as bad as you might recall it being. It's pretty good.
Watch it again, man.
Actually, I tried to rewatch it and I thought the dialogue was actually kind of bad. just from a craft standpoint, I was like, actually, this is a little over the top.
It's like pure.
True, which would make sense.
Shyamalan just keeps losing points from me. I used to apologize a lot for that, man.
Oh, I have to go off on a rabbit trail for a second because
Do it.
I don't think I listened to this episode because I'm behind because you guys are so ahead of me. But like, you guys hated Glass, right? Didn't you guys hate that
Oh
movie?
yeah,
Not a
we
fan,
hated it.
Okay, because I've
It's
heard
in
nothing
Rob's
good
top
about
10
it.
though.
No, it's
Well,
not.
It's in Rob's top 10 of the year.
Right up there with Creep.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had heard nothing good about it, but David, my husband, loves Unbreakable. It's his favorite Shyamalan movie. And he really enjoyed Split, which was like a perfect crossover for us because like I like horror and he liked Unbreakable. So it was a good movie for us. And so he really wanted to see Glass. And I was like, okay, well, I was like, I haven't heard anything good about it. So like, whatever. So we watched it and we both enjoyed it. And I actually thought the ending was super appropriate and was kind of perfect for the story. And I don't know why people hated it. So there you go.
We should have had you on that show so you could like explain your thoughts because I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have several friends who like really enjoyed it too. I think Brad's a big fan of Glass. Or
Brad
well,
is
a fan
wrong.
of Glass. Not a bit. Yeah.
Brad,
So yeah, you're not
you're wrong.
alone. You're not alone in your principles. Just the Straight Chilling crew is not about it.
No, didn't land.
Even though it is in Bob's top 10 of the year, right, Bob? Top 10 of 2019. Go ahead and pencil it in
Sweet
December
Lord.
2018, right?
Sweet Lord. I got to go back and listen to that and see what my actual top 10 is. Most of the movies that are on there probably, I didn't even know were going to be coming out this year. So it doesn't even matter. Anyway,
Except for Glass.
Randy's not here this week, but I got a little bit of trivia we can bang through real quick. So let's do
1
it.
second.
It's totally time for trivia.
It's totes time for trivs. Okay. Throughout the entire movie, no one's name is ever mentioned, and not a single character is ever referenced to by any name, which I already mentioned. There's no musical
I never
score.
noticed that. Even in the second viewing, I never noticed that.
Did you notice there's no musical score in the film?
I did notice that either.
I did
No,
not.
I did not.
Well, there is no musical score for the film. There you go. This is kind of an interesting, moderately long-winded one. So the movie's marketing team came under a good amount of fire after they hired an artist to paint a mural of the film in Sydney, Australia. Apparently, the mural covered up a 20-year-old painting by a local artist depicting animals in a cityscape below the words, "It's like a jungle sometimes." This line refers to a song by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Darren Aronofsky was embarrassed about the mural being painted over because it was so historic, and he apologized on behalf of the ad agency. A spokesperson for the ad agency said they were unaware of the iconic nature of the mural and regretted their terrible mistake. The agency has since contacted the mural's original artists and offered them their help to restore the artwork to its original form. That's just like such a bizarre thing to occur. Like,
Damn, yeah.
to just like if you're Darren Aronofsky, you have no idea what this ad agency is doing on your behalf to promote your movie, and they just like totally ruin this beautiful mural that's been there for 2 decades, and you're like, why? I don't know. I guess that's what happens when you're wearing the big pants, the big old.
But also,
pants.
like, good for the agency to have such a great idea, because all of the artwork, like Justin was mentioning, was really beautiful. Like the main poster is like her and like basically the Garden of Eden. It's very beautiful. So like good for them for thinking outside the box, but maybe do a little more research.
Maybe a little bit more. Also good on them for like apologizing and going out of their way to try and like make it right again.
Fix it.
Yeah, so
because
that's
probably
good.
expensive.
Probably. The Golden Raspberry Awards, which I've never heard of. Are you guys familiar with that? The Golden Raspberry Awards?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Razzies.
Oh, that's what I know. The Razzies. I've never heard the Golden Raspberry Awards. Okay.
No, the first time I heard it called that, I was like, oh, okay. So
connecting the dots. So, the Golden Raspberry Awards, aka the Razzies, which they give. They're like the opposite of the Oscars. They give out awards for movies for like being the worst of blank. So they received some backlash when they nominated Jennifer Lawrence for Worst Actress, and also nominated Javier Bardem for Worst Actor and Darren Aronofsky for the Worst Director for this film, which that seems silly to do.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like it. What do we got? There's a recurring theme of yellow. Oh, you already touched on that, Nicole. I will not need to speak on it. The film apparently received both boos and a standing ovation during its premiere at the Venice Film Festival. Very polarizing movie.
That's how you know you did it right.
Yeah.
I say.
People are reacting, and that's the whole point of it, right? Jennifer Lawrence got so much into her character that during the climactic scene, she started hyperventilating and even cracked one of her ribs.
Whoa.
And after filming that scene, the production was put on hold while she was placed on oxygen, and then members of the crew came up with an idea to make Jennifer Lawrence her very own, quote, happy place. They made a little small room for her to sit in to relax during filming, and it was basically like a little tent with scented candles and gumballs, and they had a little TV that was showing clips from Keeping Up with the Kardashians, apparently. So it's like her own little space to go relax in.
What a wuss.
Sure.
She's cracked a rib, no big deal. Also, how appropriate.
This one, this is another reason why I couldn't give this movie a 5 stars, because Paramount canceled the upcoming Friday the 13th film in order to move ahead with this film. Damn it, Paramount. What's wrong with
Unacceptable.
you? Inexplicable. Inconceivable. This also received an F cinema score, which is the worst possible score, only given to 19 features as of September 2017. I don't know what those other features are. I don't know what the cinema score is, or if that
like
really
an
matters.
F? Yeah, what the hell is that? What?
I don't know. I guess that's like based on audience reaction, but obviously that doesn't really carry any weight because this movie is good. When the husband is holding the doctor over the toilet, Mother notices him covering a wound on the doctor's chest. Going along with the biblical theme of the movie, this is probably the rib God took from Adam. The next day, the doctor's wife, Eve, arrives at the house.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get that. Damn, this movie's dope.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. There's lots going on. That's what I got for Randy's trivia of the week.
What was up with that thing in the toilet, though? What was that?
I read somewhere that it was a heart, but I don't. I mean, I couldn't tell. It just seemed very kind of vague.
There were some
gross
flashes where it almost seemed you were looking into the house, like in a wall or something, and it looked like there was a heart in the house.
Okay, so that I believe is because at first when you see it, it's like red and vibrant and beating, but then every time you see it, it's a little more shriveled.
Yeah.
And I think that's supposed to be like her love for him. And then at the end, when he, takes it out, of course, it's shriveled and burned.
Black,
it's like she's gotten to the very end, but there's still that gem of love, deep inside. I think that's what that is.
Nice. This movie's got layers. It's like an onion.
Real nice.
You know what time it is? It's time to go hunting.
Let's hunt them.
Cooter of the week.
Cooter of the week. Cooter of the week. Juice. What exactly is a cooter?
Cooter is the character type. We like to hunt them, catch them all. It consists of 5 points that we have determined. They are weighted, and it consists of things like smug arrogance, sexual deviancy, attire, manipulation, and overall patheticness. So, Bob still does not want to accept
4.
the addition of the pathetic tier. I think it's important, but whatever.
It's fine.
Yeah. So we're about to make I might be making a solo controversial claim in that is God a cooter? I think God might be a cooter. Interesting. So we're taking it to a new level. We've had ghost cooters.
True.
We've had like monster cooters.
True.
I don't think we've ever had a deity
cooter.
It's got a cooter.
We got to apply the 5 points and see if it works out or it doesn't work out.
He manipulates mother. I think that's his biggest point gathering. So he's manipulative and he's arrogant. He's got some smug arrogance.
Definitely.
Yeah, he is God, though.
True.
Yeah.
But in human form,
everything.
when he's Javier, I mean, he is arrogant. He's not really pathetic.
No.
He's actually pretty smooth, and even though like mother keeps forgetting him, you're like, don't forgive him. You're like,
he might be a little pathetic in that he really like has to have the love and worship from his followers.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Like his kind of like this like groveling nature. Yeah, when you see like behind the scenes, like when he's amongst them, he's more stoic and like respected. But yeah, when it's just him and mother and like he like can't write and he's like frustrated and
very insecure.
Yeah.
Okay. Little pathetic. Okay. See, Bob, it's important.
I mean, whatever. Agree to disagree.
Sexual deviancy.
Nah.
I don't think so.
Nah.
I don't think so. He never like tries to mac on the ladies or anything.
Nah.
He's pretty straight on that category. And attire. I mean, God's always looking pretty smooth, I think.
Yeah.
I don't really,
Yeah.
He's not doing anything crazy. So
he was what,
I don't know.
2.5 out of 5? Pretty weak.
2.5 out of 5.
I don't think so.
No, God's not a cooter.
I don't think so.
He steals a baby from a newborn baby from its mother and passes it. I don't know.
I don't know if I would call it necessarily stealing. I mean, well, let's not get into that.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
Let's not go there.
That's the whole thing.
Because I feel like he's like appropriately complex. Like he's got good qualities, he's got some bad qualities. He's a well-rounded character, but I don't think he tips over into cooter exactly.
Yeah, I don't know that I see him as a cooter either. Obviously, he is problematic and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. I like even while watching it, cooter didn't cross my mind. I don't know. Like if he was a cooter, it'd be a very light cooter.
Okay,
light cooter.
Okay.
Hashtag very light cooter.
Yep.
No,
cooter light.
cooter light. God.
Juice. What do you think?
I don't know. Watching this movie and thinking like we're gonna rate a cooter. I thought definitely there were moments where I was like, he's being such a cooter right now. And it's mainly just the way I guess that he interacts with mother. Like I guess if like those behind the scenes, like we're always saying like, oh, and when you see like actually how much he needs these people and how much he's willing to put mother aside and like willing to see like how much she gives to him. It's not like sexual deviancy, but I guess at that point too, like even like she says, like, you never loved me. You just cared how much I feel like that's a bit of a cooter move too. Like, you know, like he only has sex with her. And when she like challenges him, like, you can't even fuck me. And then he's like, well, I'm going to fuck you now, bitch. But
And
like
actually,
that could be a little sexual deviant.
the
I mean,
movie cuts, and we don't know if they have sex or not. Which also,
right.
Well, okay.
Because what are the dynamics of that? Of like
Right.
God collaborating with nature to create the world. Like, what is that?
yeah.
But even that, like, he won't have sex with like a woman who's just like loving him. But like, as soon as she challenges him or questions him or like questions his manhood, then he's like, well, now could be a little sexual deviance.
No, I don't think I think that would be more pathetic. I don't know that it's like sexual deviant, but yeah, I don't know. But maybe he earns the full third point of patheticness. Maybe. Yeah, I'd give you.
I think he's a bit of a cooter. I think God's a bit of a
Cooter light. We'll get Cooter light.
Controversial statement from Shaboy.
Is that right?
I don't think there's a Cooter in this movie, but if we have to name a Cooter for every movie, then I would say it's got to be, which I know you definitely don't have to, but I'm voting for just humanity in general.
That's actually very
because they're
valid.
a character and they check all the boxes in spades.
True. That is true.
Yeah.
So one solid Cooter humanity, one half Cooter God. All right.
Aren't we a beautiful mess?
God created Cooter. Let's leave it at that. Oh, gracious. What are we doing next? We got voicemails.
So when you say God created Cooter, are you talking about Shaboy?
You?
I mean, I've spearheaded this whole thing.
Oh, my
Takes
God.
one to know one.
The patheticness.
That was for Bob specifically.
Are you talking about Shaboy? No.
I had to get my weekly. Oh my God.
Oh my juice.
All right, what are we doing next?
We got voicemails. We got some voicemails we got to get to.
All right, we got voicemails.
Jumping into our Hotline Scream segment of the evening. If you're listening and you would like to call in and leave us a voicemail, you can hit us up at 904-638-3231. First up.
Nope, I'm in charge this week, Bob. I'm controlling this. First up, we're going to hear
stains over here. Okay.
First up, we're going to hear from the lovely Miss Pia. She's a big supporter or chatter on Slack, I guess. So this was a special
participant
voicemail, that she sent to us through Slack, actually, because she lives in Ireland. I don't know if she can wait, right? Ireland?
Yep.
I don't know if she can call us. So this is her voicemail from Pia.
Hi guys, this is Pia. This is test number 3. I didn't know there was a time limit and I consumed recreational substances and I went on an epic 15-minute talk or just rant, and then Blurb had to tell me that it was actually 3 minutes. So here's my attempt to again consume recreational substances and keep it under 2.5 minutes. So I wanted to tell you guys what your podcast reminded me of now, and how as entertainers you guys never know what the person on the receiving end will take away from your podcast or what it will become in the future. And so back in May, I learned calligraphy with my grandmother here in Texas, and I sent some of the samples to Andy and Bob, and I remember spending hours practicing, and my grandmother actually wrote out after I mastered the alphabet. It was time to use words or write out words, and I was on a straight chilling binge, so I had her write out the name of the podcast and the name of all of you guys, except Soju. Sorry, I didn't remember your name, Justin. And I was really proud of myself, and I relate your podcast to that time. And so now, fast forward a few months later, and Grandma sadly and super unexpectedly passed away. So I'm back here in Texas to be with family, and I'm listening to your podcast again, and it's such a nice memory. It's really sweet. So that's what I wanted to say. But I also had 2 spooky stories related to grandma, really, that I wanted to talk about because it is much more fun and it's genuinely funny. So hopefully I'll get a 45-second extension. Back in May, that same trip, I think the day that I arrived, sorry, I was doing my hair and I was listening to you guys. It was around 10 o'clock at night and grandma was out and my grandfather was asleep. He's 90. He is a Korean War vet. He says that he can't hear. Okay, so there I am, and I start hearing knocking on the window in the room next door. So I go in and I turn on the light and I ask who's there, but nobody answers. And instead, the banging continues on all the windows that are facing the street, and they are getting louder, and it was terrifying. And then the doorbell starts ringing, like really loudly, incessantly. I was so scared. This is straight out of a horror movie. So I wake up my grandfather, and I guess his training kicked in. He saw me, my face, and he told me to lay down low. And then he went to the peephole. I didn't dare to, because what if you have hobo with a shotgun, but in a bad way? And this is Texas. So, but he did. And it was grandma. I locked her out by mistake, so she couldn't get back in, and she panicked. And instead of ringing the doorbell nicely, she started, doing all that. And then I panicked, and he was so mad at both of us. It's a really fond memory now. So that's what I want to say. You guys rock. I recommend you all the time on Reddit. I love learning new things about horror and becoming less afraid. So keep the good work going, and happy holidays and everything. Bye, you guys.
A true roller coaster of emotion. Thanks for calling, Pia.
Yeah, overall, just like so delightful.
Yeah.
What a wonderful little story.
Yeah. Sorry to hear about your grandmother passing. That is very terrible and very sad, but it does sound like you guys had a lot of pretty amazing memories. So don't lock your grandparents out of the house, people. Take that away. Learn that from this.
All right. Next, we are going to hear from Alex. Or wait, are we good? We good? We want to talk about... I'm sorry. I cut that
you're running the show, deity stains.
Sorry, trying to keep us on track here.
This is all
Soju runs a tight ship. Okay.
God.
Captain Stains over here. All right, here we go. We're going to hear from Alex.
Hey guys, it's Alex from Syracuse, New York, and I was really inspired by your top 10 of the decade episode, so I decided to figure my own out. And I have it here, and I'm going to read it off to you. I also have my overrated and my underrated. It's probably going to surprise you. It's Bob, you might get pissed at the overrated one. And I'm sorry, but anyways, it's just going to be controversial. So my number 10 pick is Mama. I absolutely love this movie. I've loved this movie ever since it came out. It was spacing on his name right now. Machete, I believe it was, the director that did the It movies. This was his first directorial debut, and I absolutely love this movie. I cannot say enough great things about it. My number 9 pick is Bone Tomahawk. I love Kurt Russell. I love Richard Jennings. Matthew Fox is cool too. It's a great Western, and it's got a really cool cannibalistic horror feel on it. My number 8 is The Void. I absolutely love this movie because there's a lot of Lovecraftian elements in it, and I'm a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan. My number 7 pick is Hereditary. This movie absolutely fucked me up after I watched it. It took me like an hour to 2 hours before I like got myself back in check. Number 6 is Cabin in the Woods. I think this movie is great. I think the tropes it makes fun of horror movies was great, in the lead up, and you know, this movie blew my mind when it came time to show like all the monsters and everything. My number 5 pick is The Conjuring 2. I absolutely love this movie. It scared the hell out of me. My number 4 pick is The Conjuring. This movie was absolutely terrifying. I couldn't agree more. My number 3 pick, I'm sorry, Randy, it's It Chapter 1. I love this movie. I have not seen It Chapter 2 yet. I'm not really excited because of everything that I've read, but I am a diehard fan of this film. My number 2 pick is A Quiet Place. This was my favorite movie of that year that came out. And my number 1 pick is The Witch. Nothing, absolutely nothing can touch this movie. So I'm going to speed through. My overrated is It Follows. I'm sorry, Rob. You know,
what the fuck, Alex? We're cutting you off.
Overrated. It Follows. No explanation.
No
Fuck
more
you, Bob.
from Alex. He's banned from the show. You dirty dog. It Follows is incredible. Alex did get cut off there, and we're not playing the rest of his shit because he does call back because It Follows is the shit. Alex, you did this to yourself. You did it to yourself.
Damn.
Bob runs a tight ship.
Bob's bringing down the hammer of Thor over here.
Yeah. Okay. No, we just have a shitload of voicemails to get through, to be totally honest. Thanks for calling.
Three minute. If you'd like to call everyone, you got that 3-minute limit, son.
Yep. Just to make sure we hit them all. Next up, we got Miles, right? You got Miles?
Yep, I got Bob. Next up, we've got Miles.
Right, like I said. Like I have said. Miles.
All right, we got a power struggle going on here. Miles, here you go.
What's going on, guys? Miles here. I was calling in about last week's episode, the Decade in Review. Great episode. I think you guys covered the decade pretty extensively. Something I don't remember you guys covering too much was the rise of YouTube over this past decade. I mean, YouTube's been around since 2005, I think, but I think, you know, this decade it really blew up, and I think especially with the younger generation, that's how a lot of people are getting introduced to horror right now. I know you got channels like Dead Meat. I think they have like 3.5 million subscribers, and it's a lot of younger people who are, you know, aren't familiar with the horror genre. If you like look in the comments, a lot of people on there say that they don't even watch the movies. They just watch his videos on the movies, in those like 20-minute kind of beat by beat kill count segments. So I think that's how a lot of younger people are getting introduced to horror now. You also have the rise of like video essays like Ryan Hollinger, Something Ghoulish. You know, these guys who they break the films down on a level that you're not going to get outside of a film class. So I think YouTube has really exposed a whole new generation to horror, especially younger crowd. You know, maybe Justin can tell us a little bit more about that since, you know, he just turned 20. He might be a little more in tune with the youth of today. Anyways, guys, keep up the good work. Talk to you later.
Hey, Miles. Thanks for calling. Also, you don't need to feed Justin's ego. It's plenty big. It's plenty big.
Let me tell you what we think about things. One, subscribe to Straight Chilling Podcast on YouTube.com. Yeah, it's youtube.com/Straight Chilling Podcast.
That's what we think.
To get all your horror. That's what we think about that. Thank you, Miles. I didn't think about that. I honestly, personally, I don't watch a lot of like horror YouTube other than like our realm of like Squad.
Yeah, same. Yeah, definitely watch something ghoulish, but yeah, I guess that a lot of young people do watch a lot of YouTube, and it's kind of a shame to me that, like Miles brought up, a lot of times people don't watch the films themselves. They watch like film recaps in 15, 20 minutes or whatever, which, man, that sucks. You're really not experiencing the movie at all that way. Hopefully that's not a trend that continues, because what a bummer. Get off my lawn,
also,
et cetera, blah, blah, blah.
I will say YouTube though has helped me. I don't know, has helped me watch a lot of films maybe that I don't have access to that we're covering. Every now and then it'll slide. I watched Noroi on it was completely on YouTube with the subs. So
nice pronunciation. Good job.
Yeah, thanks to YouTube. That was a couple episodes. Neroy Jenkins.
Neroy. Yeah. Good point, Miles, man. Thanks for calling and bringing that up to us. We've got one more voicemail, Justin.
So I'm going to play the last one that was delivered to us. Is that correct, Bob? Do you know? Do you have any insight into this? Okay. This is from someone you might know. It's Shaboy Randy Gandy G. Landy, who cannot be with us this week. So he called into the Hotline Scream, Randy, the Hotline Scream. So let's hear what Randy has to say.
Here we go.
What's up, everybody? It's Randy. I am sorry that I couldn't be there this week to record, and I'm also sorry that I could not review this movie to actually give it a score. So instead, I'm going to call in the old phone call I like to call the further. So, really quickly, I'm going to talk about this movie, Mother. I really love this movie, and Rob and I spoke at length about this, so I can already anticipate that he has called this movie fart sniffy several times. This movie has a kind of a reputation for being pretentious, and I feel like that comes from one of two things. It either comes from people thinking it's sort of totally incomprehensible, sort of like being just a series of non sequitur nothing moments that don't really have any reason to be other than some oblique meaning that is, not really touched on directly. And then weirdly and oppositely, people tend to think of this movie as too obvious, the central metaphor of two deities existing in a plane of existence, that being a house uses a metaphor for Earth. And then Javier Bardem as God, Jennifer Lawrence as the Mother Earth, if you will, sort of the deity of the setting, and then all the people coming in and fucking it up. It's pretty heavy-handed if you watch it a second time with that in mind. So, I see it being criticized for being too heavy-handed and being too incomprehensible at the same time, and they both sort of lead towards the same conclusion of pretension. Personally, I think that kind of is a problem for this movie, like a legitimate problem that you could point to directing about, because it really just highlights what's the trick that's missed here. This movie has to kind of hit a perfect arrow right in the bullseye, where you sort of realize what the central metaphor is at just the right time. For me, it was when the baby broke in half, in order to sort of get the weight of the climax, and without actually being bored to tears for 3 acts waiting for what you know is already coming, because you've already figured out what the metaphor is supposed to be. So I think that's sort of the issue, and I think that's a fair criticism overall, even though I think pretentious is kind of a loaded word, because it just means whatever the fuck people want it to mean. Everything's pretentious if you give it a moment. Fucking Friday the 13th Part 6 is pretentious if you want it to be. All that to be said, there is sort of a problem with watching, and people will always get something different out of it because of that sort of thin line it has to tread. I think the cinematography is good, the acting's great. I love the central metaphor, and I think the rising tension really makes this movie, and I think it's fucking beautiful for what it is. But yeah, I can see that criticism. Otherwise, though, I loved it, and I really hope Justin fought tooth and nail for it. All right, guys. Well, take it easy. Feel free to yell at me on Slack if you don't agree with me. Bye-bye.
I got your back, Randy.
I didn't say
Bob.
Fart
Bob, you didn't say fart sniffy once. Yeah.
Not till now. Fart sniffy. Yeah.
Do you still feel that way, Bob? Or have you been educated by me and Nicole?
Oh my God. No, I don't really feel that way. I mean, it is, I guess you could see it that way, I suppose, but it's also pretty, I feel like it's not wild enough, I guess, to be pretentious. I thought it was the first time I saw it, because as soon as you get that, it's the Bible, dude. Okay, well, he's doing that. Kind of takes the pretension out of it a little bit.
So you were wrong, huh, Bob?
No, I was not wrong. I interpreted it differently. That's the whole thing about art, man. It means something different to everyone.
Okay.
Randy Gandy G Landy, thanks for bailing on us, dude. Maybe you'll be back next week. I'm pretty sure he will. I believe.
So.
Yeah. So we got one more thing we got to do real quick. Justin, you know what time it is. It's time to save a life.
It's time for an intervention, Bob.
Where did Bob go wrong? Were he and his friends sifting way too long through those Blu Ray bins? And it gets worse, he'll have no jet ski, wasting all his dough on those DVDs.
Bob, you've been wasting all your dough on those DVDs. I hope Randy Gandy G Landy comes back next week because this shit is tough.
Welcome to the show,
a tight ship with this sound management, but it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bob, you buy a lot of physical media. You claim it's just a hobby. We say it's a problem. We are tracking your Blu-ray purchases. Bob's got a sly smile. We got a YouTube exclusive this week. We missed it last week, but let's start it off. Bob, last week was December 2nd when we recorded. You had purchased 10 DVDs for the month. On the second day of the month, you had already purchased 10. Bob, you got a sly smile. Looks like you've got a stack. So let's see Bob's stack for the week. Oh, Lord. Here we go. YouTube exclusive. How many you got, Bob?
Before I unveil it, I would like to ask Nicole if she has any wagers on how many films I have purchased this week. I'm curious to know.
Over, under.
Oh, my gosh. Well, while I'm thinking about that, let me just tell you that whenever David and I were traveling here, we were listening to one of your episodes, which usually he's not with me when I'm listening to your episodes. And when we got to this segment and I told him what it was about, he literally laughed out loud.
Public shame.
Quality content. I'm 15.
Oh, wow.
15 for the week. Whoa. Wow.
You think that highly and or lowly of me? All right. Here's the unveiling.
Take the under. I'm going to say 7.
Okay. 7 to 15.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go.
All right. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But wait, that's a fat collection there at the end, Bob. How many movies is that?
That's a triple feature on the end there. So it's going to be an 8
count. 8 count. Ooh, I was one off, Bob. However, though, holy shit. 1 second. Last week you told me you had 3 RoboCops. I just saw another RoboCop in that stack.
True. Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay.
I have them all.
Holy shit. Holy shit. And how many of the RoboCops from last week have you watched so far?
I watched part 2. The one I have here is part 3. I haven't watched part 3 yet.
I haven't watched part 3 yet.
No.
Okay. So almost all of them then.
Yeah, I watched 1 and 2. I need to watch 3 in the remake. So what I picked up this week, I got 2 movies here that are not Vinegar Syndrome. The rest are from the November Vinegar Syndrome bundle. But I got Ready or Not on Blu-ray, which came out a few months ago. Good movie. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. And Scream Factory's RoboCop 3, which I haven't seen yet. The rest were from Vinegar Syndrome. So I've got Spookies, Tammy and the T-Rex, The Candy Snatchers, and The Angel Collection, which was the triple feature parts 1, 2, and 3. All from the Vinegar Syndrome.
All from Vinegar Syndrome. Did you get anything special in your package this time? Any stickers? Anything? Any bonuses?
No. Well, the Spookies came with a second slipcover. So I didn't actually know what I was buying when I bought all this because they did like a pre-Black Friday sale in October and it was like cheap. So I was like, the only one that I knew was on there was Tammy and the T-Rex. And I was like, well, I'm definitely going to buy that. So I'll just, I'll order the little bundle or whatever.
Definitely going to buy it. Yeah.
It's on
Might
sale.
as well. Might as well.
So,
yeah. I'm sure it's super cheap.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I got special with it was the second slipcover for the spooky.
Okay, calling him out. Bob supports you guys a lot, and I mean a lot. Bob gives you guys a lot of money. You guys need to, cut the dude some slack. Throw some stickers in there or something, Take a page out of the old straight chillin' book and just throw some extra stickers in there,
We need to charge them for all the shouts outs.
But yeah, Bob. So it is in Korea, December 11th. In the States, it is just December 10th. You have so far for the month purchased 18 Blu Rays, Bob, is what you're up to for the month. More Blu Rays than there have been days in the month so far. Wow, Bob, you're headed straight to the top. I don't think you'll break the record of 43 from last month that Bob hit, but he's going higher than months previous. Before, Bob had stayed under 20. He had counts of 17, 18, 15 throughout like June, July, August, September. So, Bob, oh my God, we've been trying to do this intervention. We thought it would help you. We thought maybe the shame would, curb your tendencies, but it hasn't. If anything, It's fueled you. It's gotten worse.
It has not
I think by the end of the year, we'll have to maybe end this segment. Our whole point is to see, though, could Bob have just bought a jet ski had he saved all of his money? You'll find out in a couple weeks. In 2 weeks, I will be in Jacksonville, Florida, doing a live show from Bob's Dining Room Table.
It's not live.
I will reveal.
We'll be in person.
Well, live for me, and I will reveal, could Bob have bought a jet ski? I want to look into his eyes and let him know whether or not he could have purchased a jet ski this year. A special straight chillin' jet ski we could have had instead of all these Blu Rays.
Sweet decals.
Do you have like a team of people that are like scouring the internet for like jet ski sales?
No.
Yeah, his name is I have Randy, Gandy, and G Landy all working around the clock to find the best jet ski deals they can.
The triple threat.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that call from Mr. S. Do to give us a call. That's Mr. C. Do, the jet ski salesman, who will tell us the deals Bob could have gotten and talk to us potentially about a sponsorship.
All the deals.
But yes. Bob, I feel pretty confident that you could have purchased a straight chillin' jet ski this year, but we'll see. We'll get the final count in just 2 weeks, Bob.
We know how you feel. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us on this episode and putting up with our nonsense once again. It's always a real pleasure to have you on the show. I'm excited to be here. Excited to be here as always. And this was a great movie. Like sometimes I feel like, I don't know what I'm going to add to this conversation, but for this one, I was super stoked, and I'm really glad, especially like just after viewing it, that I had the opportunity to talk it out with some fellow horror nerds. So thanks so much for having me on.
Really appreciated your perspective this week, and apologies for ghosting you yesterday.
It's all right. It's okay. Ghost stains.
Yeah, ghost stains. Thanks for putting up with my shit.
Ectoplasm stains. Nicole, remind everybody one more time where they can find your podcast.
chiaroscurohorror.com. It's Chiaroscuro Horror on Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, and to spell it, it's CHIAROSCURO.
Write it down, people.
Chiaroscuro.
Churro.
Any pronunciation.
I'm always just going to say churro.
Any pronunciation you choose, I will accept.
Yep. Just put it in your ears.
I always will fuck it up.
Yes.
That's how it goes.
I don't think I even pronounce it correctly. It's like Italian art term. I'm from Arkansas. It's whatever. So, sure.
Not a lot of Italians in Arkansas. Huh. Who knew?
No.
But there are a lot of churros over there.
Yeah, totally. So that's going to do it for us this week at Straight Chilling. We're going to be back next week with a brand new show. We're going to be talking about the new movie Parasite from Southern Korea, which is your region there.
Hell.
Sleepy Stains. So put your eyeballs on that. Get ready for next week. I believe Randy will be back for that one. Until then, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. You can follow us on Twitter at str8_chilling, on Instagram at Straight Chilling Podcast. You can send us an email through our website, straightchillingpodcast.com. If you want to join in on our daily Slack conversations, let me know on any one of our social media platforms, and I'll send you a link so you can join that. Don't forget about our Joe Bob live watch party this Friday, December 13th at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's all I got. That's all I got for you. Until next week, as always, all you mother truckers, please keep chilling.